night, where the moonlight glows. Zombies lurking everywhere, that's how the story goes. Grab your gear, hold on tight, it's a wild.
Welcome to the Zombie Story Zone, where the dead walk, the living run, and every shadow hides a nightmare. If you're ready to dive into tales of terror, ancient curses, and flesh-hungry horrors, you've come to the right place. Tonight, we unravel a chilling story of an ancient tomb, a vengeful king, and a curse that refuses to stay buried. But beware, this isn't just a story, it's a warning. Because sometimes the past doesn't stay dead, and neither do its secrets. Before we begin, make sure to hit that like button if you're ready to face the darkness. Don't forget to subscribe and press the bell icon so you never miss a spine-tingling tale. Share this story with your friends because terror is always better when it's shared. And we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below to let us know how we're doing. What sends shivers down your spine? What stories keep you up at night? Your feedback helps us bring you more of the content you crave. Now turn off the lights, grab your headphones, and prepare yourself. The dead are waiting, and they're hungry. Let's begin.
Every story's a thrill, come and let your courage show. Fight or flight, we'll unite as the horror unfolds.
Deep in the heart of the Cambodian jungle, Dr. Evelyn Carter and her team of archaeologists stood before the entrance of an ancient tomb. The air was thick with humidity, and the dense canopy above cast an eerie green glow over the site. The tomb, hidden for centuries, was said to belong to King Vathara, a ruler who had vanished from history under mysterious circumstances. The entrance was sealed with a massive stone slab, covered in carvings of serpents and skulls. Warnings in an ancient language were etched into the stone, but Dr. Carter paid them no mind. She was a scientist, and scientists didn't believe in curses. "This is it," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "The discovery of a lifetime." Her assistant, Mark, adjusted his glasses nervously. "Dr. Carter, these carvings, they're warnings. They say anyone who disturbs the tomb will face eternal suffering. What if the curse is real?" Dr. Carter chuckled. "Curses are just stories, Mark. Let's get this slab open." With ropes and pulleys, the team shifted the heavy stone slab, revealing a dark passageway. A cold breeze wafted out, carrying the scent of decay. The team descended into the tomb, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The walls were covered in faded murals depicting King Vathara's life and reign. One mural showed the king being betrayed by his people, his face twisted in rage. Another showed him performing a dark ritual, surrounded by chanting priests. At the center of the tomb stood a stone coffin, its surface covered in more warnings. Dr. Carter approached it, her excitement growing. "This is it," she whispered. "The final resting place of King Vathara." "Dr. Carter, maybe we should think this through," Mark said nervously. "What if the curse is real? What if we're making a mistake?" "Mark, we're scientists," Dr. Carter replied firmly. "We don't believe in curses. Now, help me open this coffin." With great effort, they pried open the heavy lid. Inside lay the mummified remains of King Vathara. His body was wrapped in decaying cloth, but something about it was wrong. The skin was gray and leathery, but it wasn't crumbling to dust like it should have been after 1,000 years. It looked preserved. Before anyone could react, the king's eyes snapped open. The team froze in horror as the mummy sat up, its joints creaking like rusty hinges. Its milky white eyes locked onto Mark, and its mouth opened to reveal blackened teeth. A low, guttural growl escaped its throat. "What the?" Mark started, but he didn't get to finish. The mummy lunged at him, moving faster than anything that old should be able to move. Its hands clamped around Mark's throat, and before anyone could intervene, it bit into his neck. Mark screamed, but the sound was cut short as his body went limp. The mummy dropped him and turned its attention to the rest of the team. "Run!" Dr. Carter shouted, but it was too late. The tomb was filled with the sounds of screams and tearing flesh. She barely managed to escape, scrambling out of the tomb and into the jungle. Dr. Carter ran until her legs gave out. When she finally stopped, she was alone. She had no idea how many of her team had survived, but she knew one thing for sure: the curse was real. Over the next few days, strange reports began to surface from nearby villages. People were disappearing, and those who were found were no longer human. Their skin was gray, their eyes vacant, and they had an insatiable hunger for flesh. The zombie plague had begun. Dr. Carter knew she had to stop it. She returned to the tomb, armed with whatever weapons she could find. But when she arrived, she found something she hadn't expected. The tomb was empty. The mummy was gone. Dr. Carter led the group of survivors to an abandoned ranger station deep in the jungle. The station was dilapidated, but its sturdy walls and elevated structure made it a defensible position. The survivors, a mix of villagers, a local guide named Ravi, and a young medic named Priya, worked quickly to fortify the station. They boarded up windows, set up watch shifts, and gathered whatever supplies they could find. As night fell, the group huddled around a small fire. The jungle outside was alive with eerie sounds, growls, shuffling footsteps, and the occasional distant scream. Dr. Carter sat apart from the others, staring into the flames. Her gray skin and hollow eyes were a constant reminder of what she had become. But her mind was still sharp. She was determined to use her newfound strength to stop the curse. Priya approached her cautiously, holding a first aid kit. Dr. Carter, I know you're not like the others, but I want to help. Let me check your wound. Dr. Carter hesitated, then nodded. She pulled aside her torn shirt to reveal the knife wound in her chest. The flesh around it was blackened and dead, but it didn't bleed. Priya's hands trembled as she cleaned the wound, but she didn't say a word. Thank you, Dr. Carter said quietly. You're brave. Priya smiled weakly. We're all scared, but you're giving us hope. That's something. The next morning, Dr. Carter gathered the group. We need to find Captain Harris and the heart, she said. But we can't do it blindly. We need a plan. Ravi, the local guide, stepped forward. I might be able to help. Before the plague started, I heard rumors about a hidden temple deep in the jungle. The locals called it the Temple of Shadows. They said it was where the king performed his darkest rituals. If the heart is anywhere, it's there. Dr. Carter nodded. Do you know how to get there? Ravi hesitated. The jungle is dangerous, even without the zombies. But I think I can find it. The group spent the day preparing for the journey. They packed food, water, and weapons, machetes, bows, and a few firearms scavenged from the ranger station. As they set out, Dr. Carter couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The journey through the jungle was grueling. The heat was oppressive, and the thick undergrowth slowed their progress. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig made them freeze, fearing an ambush by the undead. At one point, they came across a river. The water was murky and still, and a thick mist hung over its surface. Ravi warned them to be cautious. The locals say this river is cursed. They call it the River of Souls. As they crossed the river on a rickety wooden bridge, the mist suddenly thickened. Shapes began to emerge from the fog, figures with glowing eyes and outstretched hands. The group froze, their weapons raised. Don't move, Dr. Carter whispered. They're not real. They're illusions. The figures faded as quickly as they had appeared, but the experience left everyone shaken. The jungle doesn't want us here, Priya said, her voice trembling. We don't have a choice, Dr. Carter replied. We keep moving. After days of travel, they finally reached the Temple of Shadows. It was a massive structure, half buried in the jungle and covered in vines. The entrance was flanked by stone statues of snarling beasts, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. As they approached, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The statues came to life, their stone bodies cracking and shifting as they stepped down from their pedestals. Run! Dr. Carter shouted. The group sprinted into the temple, the stone beasts close behind. They barely managed to slam the heavy doors shut, trapping the creatures outside. The temple's interior was dark and filled with the scent of decay. The walls were covered in more hieroglyphs, depicting the king's rituals and the creation of the curse. Dr. Carter studied the carvings intently. This is it, she said. This is where the king hid his heart. But we need to be careful. The temple is booby-trapped. The group moved cautiously through the temple, avoiding pressure plates and tripwires. They finally reached the heart's chamber, a large room filled with glowing crystals and a pedestal in the center. On the pedestal was the golden box containing the king's heart. But standing in front of it was Captain Harris. I was wondering when you'd show up, he said, his voice cold. He held the heart in one hand and a pistol in the other. Give it to me, Harris, Dr. Carter said, stepping forward. This isn't you. The king is manipulating you. Harris laughed. You think I'm being controlled? No, Dr. Carter. I chose this. The king promised me power, and I took it. With this heart, I can control the undead. I can rule this world. Before anyone could react, Harris raised his pistol and fired. The bullet struck Ravi in the chest, and he fell to the ground, lifeless. The group scattered, taking cover behind pillars and statues. Dr. Carter knew they had to act fast. She signaled to Priya and the others to distract Harris while she made her way to the pedestal. As they drew his fire, she lunged forward, tackling him to the ground. The heart fell from his hand and rolled across the floor. Harris snarled, his eyes glowing with the king's magic. He grabbed Dr. Carter by the throat, his strength unnatural. You can't win, he hissed. But Dr. Carter wasn't alone. Priya grabbed the heart and held it high. Dr. Carter, what do I do? Destroy it, Dr. Carter shouted, struggling against Harris's grip. Priya hesitated for only a moment before smashing the heart against the pedestal. It shattered into pieces, releasing a burst of dark energy that filled the room. Harris screamed as the king's magic left his body. He collapsed to the ground, lifeless. The temple began to shake, the walls cracking and crumbling. We need to get out of here, Dr. Carter shouted. The group barely made it out of the temple before it collapsed. As they stood in the jungle, catching their breath, they noticed something strange. The zombies that had been wandering the jungle were collapsing, their bodies turning to dust. The curse was broken, but Dr. Carter knew her journey wasn't over. She could still feel the king's magic inside her, a remnant of the curse. She looked at Priya and the others, her resolve stronger than ever. We've stopped the king, she said, but there are still people out there who need our help. We'll rebuild. We'll survive. The group nodded, their fear replaced by determination. Together, they began the long journey back to civilization, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Months later, Dr. Carter stood on the edge of the jungle, staring at the horizon. The survivors had built a new community, a safe haven for those who had lost everything. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the king's curse wasn't truly gone. As she turned to walk away, she noticed a figure watching her from the trees. It was a man, his eyes glowing faintly with the same dark energy she had seen in Harris. He smiled, then disappeared into the shadows. Dr. Carter clenched her fists. The fight wasn't over. Not yet.